You know
So what he basically saying is, if you got a girl at home, don't take your little rested butt out there and be trying to court these girls out here in the club. You better commit to the one that you have at home, because if you go out here and you don't catch nothing,
Right.
you gonna come home and Mercedes-Benz gonna be in your driveway.
Right.
Welcome to Recruited, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with the top high school athletes in the country. Join us as we dive deep into the untold stories, challenges, and triumphs of these exceptional athletes being recruited by the top programs. All right, welcome to another episode of Recruited. Today is gonna be me and my guy, Greg. We're gonna just chop it up a little bit, talk about the development of recruiting and why we chose to make this something that we felt like was important to get out there into the recruited space, into the sports space. So what's going on, my guy?
Absolutely. What's going on, my boy?
Yes,
Good. We good.
Can't complain.
So,
complain.
D, this is actually an episode I've really been wanting to get into, because I think me and you are kind of so selfless as people. We don't get the chance to introduce ourselves or talk about why we're doing this. You know, we've been real advocates of youth and been wanting to take down those barriers and help them move on to better experiences. Right. So you know what I mean. So this is a great opportunity for us to kind of share why we're doing this and the whole meaning behind it. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, of our why, and we can move on from that.
Yeah, I just think, like, first, I feel like God has given me the gift to inspire, to motivate. I think that's my calling, to try to be a positive person in the community and help others. That's just something that I always felt attached to. And, just trying to navigate and figure out, like, at this day and age, what's a great way for us to be able to influence something that we're around all the time, and that's sports. And I think, it's important for someone to be able to give individuals knowledge and game around how to navigate recruiting and navigating this collegiate experience or trying to get to college. In most cases, I don't think, there's individuals who have that background to be able to give people game about those type of situations. So I just feel like, trying to figure out what's the best way to do it. I feel like a podcast would be the best platform to be able to get it out there. You and I and Assad has a group chat, and the group chat is
spicy.
Popping. It's popping. It's spicy and popping. Yeah. We talk trash. We talk about schools and what we're gonna do and how they play. We talk about recruiting and experience and follow each other. Kids on what their journey looks like. It's just a lot of game goes on in that group chat. And I always say, if we could have somebody subscribe to our group chat, we'll be rich right now. Because people will pay to see what we're putting in our group chat. So, when I thought about, like, who to do this with, right? Me and you kind of had that natural connection going back and forth, and I just felt like we could balance each other out. And we had a relationship for a very long time. Very long
time. And I think even in like you said, in our group chat, me and you are natural competitors. You know what I mean?
Right.
We ain't never backing down.
Nope.
Once we got a topic and we strong about it, we gonna fight to the finish about it.
The arguments are hot. I'm talking about we Googling, we AIing.
Absolutely.
We putting facts in the chat.
I'm putting screenshots, everything in there. Proof.
We calling a friend, phone a friend, whatever.
Fact. But taking it back a little bit, our kids have been playing ball together since they've been 4 or 5 years old.
Right.
And before we knew each other like that, we both kind of realized that we were willing to take this investment to another level.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We were real passionate about the development of our kids.
Yep.
The spaces that they played in, the teams they competed on, and that's traveled with us as we've grown as adults, and our kids have grown as young men, as the great recruits that they are now. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So let's take some time to talk about some hot button topics that our recruited community would like to know about. Starting with, like, parent involvement.
All right.
I think this is a very important topic because sometimes I don't think parents realize that they have to be just as involved as the kid.
Right.
A lot of times they think, whatever high school they play for, that this is the coach's job,
right.
or this is their responsibility.
Yeah.
They just supposed to sit back and it's supposed to happen. So talk about some of the ways that you're involved with Ace and some of the other youth that you're involved with to help them get to the next level.
To me, it's about the experience, man. And it, I'm probably gonna be a little elongated on this conversation because, when I started the Much Greater program and it was an AAU basketball program, my thought process was, how do I, get people from the community the opportunity to go out and have a broader experience? Because when you have a broader experience, you can expect more. And I got that from my experience. I'm from, Theodore, Alabama, small town. And until I went to West Virginia and college football showed me so many places in DC and New York and things like that, my perspective grew. And then once my perspective grew, my expectations grew on what I wanted to achieve and the things that I felt like I had the opportunity to achieve. So when I created that program, it was really to give people the opportunity to travel in a high fashion luxury way, to experience life at a high level, so we can change their expectation. And when you really look back at some of these kids that's balling right now, a lot of those kids come from the Much Greater program. They've been a part of that program. So I think that worked. So, and for me, as far as the parent dynamic, again, like I said on a previous episode, I was raised by a single mother, and until I was like nine, going on 10 years old, and before my stepfather, who's not who I call my father, stepped into the picture. But I think the parent dynamic is critical. My mother missed one sporting event,
right,
a track meet. Out of my entire life. And I was so mad at her for missing that one track meet, because her presence was always there. And I needed that presence to be there. Just knowing that she was in the stands, watching, cheering. I can still visualize to this day where she would sit in the stands. And just having that presence brung a level of calmness over me. And just knowing that she was doing everything she could in investment, working 2 jobs, working at the McDonald's, working at the Leap company until she got her degree. To me, that built some motivation. Like, I want to do better in life so I can be a better provider. And with me not having a father, right, I knew once I had the opportunity to lead a family, I wanted to give them the best and give them some things that I didn't have. So when I visualized, throwing the ball in the backyard with your father, or, saying riding the passenger seat with your father, like those little experiences mean so much to me. And I wanted to provide that to my boys. So like my boys been working out since 5 years old. Right. They've been grinding since 5 years old. And I do think there's value in having both parents, because daddy's gonna be hard.
Yeah,
I'm hard on him, and I'm gonna talk to him like a man. I'm gonna challenge him like a man, and because the world is hard, and I want him to be prepared for that. But he can go home, and mama can go in the room when he laying on the bed and
rub his back a little bit.
You're like, daddy love you. Right, he just doing it because he love you. He wants the best for you. So it's that balance there, because I am doing it for that. But he has the pleasure. Both of my boys has the pleasure of having that balance. And every household is not blessed to have both parents. Some, mothers that's having to play the father, be the disciplinary, and, be the nurturer and being someone who console them. So parents is important. Being there, investing in your kid is extremely important. And trying to do your best to elevate them and take them and to help them navigate this experience is critical. And you don't have to, here's what I would say, it takes 2 people to make a kid, right? Doesn't mean that those 2 people have to be together, but there is a place for both roles
to come together.
Yeah, it's a place for both roles, because both of those roles is necessary and it's needed, and it's unfair for one person to try to accommodate both sides of that equation. It's really unfair. But shout out to the people who are doing it. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the people doing it, because there's a lot of people out there successfully doing it. But I would just say to anybody, like, try to, if the relationship is not working, like, still try to play your role, because that kid needs that balance, and it's important.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love everything you just talked about. It kind of takes me back to where my passion for sports come from. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, a real sports-rich, blue-collar town. You know what I mean? We love our sports. We love our track. We love our football.
Right.
And everything that comes around that. I was a good young stud athlete coming up, and when I got to high school, I seen it from the best. I graduated from Glenville High School, so shout out to all the Tar Blooders out there, Coach Ginn. He kind of paved the way for kids in Ohio of showing coaches how to get out there and expose your athletes, what I mean, on his own dime. He was putting us on buses, taking us on tours, taking us to camps, taking us to showcases, taking us to the trainer after school,
right.
Following us in his van as we running through Bracknell, getting,
absolutely,
chased by dogs and everything.
Yes, sir. Give us roses.
Roses. So I've seen that and how it's supposed to look. So a lot of times when I, see different situations, I'm like, that's not really how it's supposed to look, because I know what the outcome is when you are really have your arms wrapped around athletes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And shout out to, like, there's a lot of powerful, men out there and women who are doing for others and doing those things. So you give them their roses, because, like, they don't have to do that. They don't have, they can just take care of their own. But it's people that's going above and beyond, taking these kids places, taking them to camps, like you say, picking them up, because they want to see their community and people coming from their community to do better. So shout out to all.
And they get nothing out of that.
And they get nothing out of that.
They get nothing out of that. It's nothing. I've taken kids to camps. You know what I mean? I've taken kids to universities. With me and my son, just so they can experience that. You know what I mean? And maybe light a fire under them, because I see the talent in them. You just don't see where the motivation is coming from. You know what I mean? So I've done that. I've been selfless. Been put in those positions to really elevate these kids, and that's kind of where we at. And both of us are coming from Northern Kentucky. A very overlooked, under recruited place.
Yep.
So kind of talk about how you made your choice to decide to move your family from Northern Kentucky to Ohio.
I was going to ask you that.
Okay.
But
okay.
I can. So for me, like, again, I'm always trying to find the best situation for my kids.
Yeah.
Like that as a father, that's my responsibility, to try to put them in the best situation to be successful. And when you look at, the sports in Kentucky from a football perspective, and you look at Ohio, it's different.
Different world.
It's just a different world.
Yeah.
So, as when, I'm not from Kentucky or, Ohio, but learning the area, learning the tri-state, I've learned that Ohio is the better place for football sports. So absolutely. Of course I want my son to play against the better competition, and I want to put him in a better situation where he's going to get the most exposure. So, we asked a lot of questions.
Yeah.
We went a lot of places. Yeah. We talked to a lot of people.
You even called me.
I called. Yes, I did. So like, just trying to figure out who are those guys, and then who are those coaches?
Yes.
Because that's important. Like, not only about like what are the schools and what conferences they playing in, but like who are the coaches that are really going above and beyond for their athletes. Like you say, those guys who are picking them up, who's placing the phone calls, who's gonna has the network, because that's important. The coaches need to have
gotta have accessibility.
They gotta have accessibility. They have to have a network. Like, you can go play 4 years for this coach, and if he don't have no phone list, no phone log, where he can pick up the phone and call these coaches and say, "Hey, I got a stud over here." Then you just playing for him. So he has to have that capability. And in this area, to me, what I've heard and what I've learned is only a few coaches who really have that
juice. Who got the juice?
Who has the juice?
Absolutely.
And I selected one of them.
Yeah.
It's very close between another one.
Yeah, right.
But I selected one that had the juice.
Yeah.
And it works out.
Facts. And I was kind of in that same boat, when we left Northern Kentucky, my son, he was the, number 1 rated player in Kentucky. You know what I mean? So it was a huge deal for him to come across the river and pick a school. We could have went anywhere, public, private, whatever it may have been. But I really wanted to know how invested the coach was outside of his success.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because I tell you right now, I'm cool with wins and losses, you know what I mean? But that's not my biggest thing. Wins and losses are for coaches. That's for you guys to pat your chest and put your trophies on in your cabinets and things like that. But what are your seniors doing when they graduate? You know what I mean? Are they just going back home? Are they, trying to figure things out? Or do you have a plan in place for your seniors to go on and play or go on and do something else? You know what I mean? I want to know how invested you are in that process. So that's why when I finally met up with Coach Bolden at Lakota West, I was blown back by his approach. You know what I mean? I already knew he had the juice. You know what I mean? Just his roster of players that went on to go play in Division I football, which is the dreams that I have for my son and my son had for himself. But his approach to that was just so great. He would tell me, we may win, we may lose, you know what I mean? But he always say, if you got the players, you gonna win. You know what I mean? But I can promise you that I'm going to get your kids to the next level. And that's kind of the biggest difference I've seen in Ohio coaches and Kentucky coaches. Kentucky coaches are more worried about their individual success as a coach, which is fine. Which is fine. That's what you have a passion to do, to coach, but there's also another hat that you have to wear to get your players recruited. Yeah. And in today's age, that has to be on your priority list because just like I have a phone, the parent next to me has a phone, that parent has a phone, and they see what's going on at these other schools.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, so to the coaches, like, there's camps, there's coaches, camps, associations. Like, you can go be a part of those places and build your network. Like, you have to be someone who's actively out there doing it. So it's not like, because you're in Kentucky, you don't have a network. You have to go out there and build that network and be purposeful about doing so. So I like what you said about about Bolden. I share the same sentiment about Dreyer, and I'm gonna drop this nugget. If you guys don't know what the open period is, all right, there's several open periods, starting kind of like right now is in January, and it goes out through the summer. There's a calendar that's produced that shows you when are the open periods, and the open periods mean contact period. That means college coaches can come to visit your son or daughter
during school
hours at school. All right. Here's an easy way to figure out if your coach got the juice or not. During that period, if you see that a lot of coaches are coming to your school, and they may not be talking to your kid, but a lot of coaches are coming to that school and visiting that school, then there's a highly likelihood that your coach got the juice.
That your coach got the juice. So when we're doing you guys' contact period, how many schools came to Anderson?
Oh, over 50.
Yeah. So same with us.
Over 50. Over 50 schools came through the doors.
Absolutely.
Now, that's crazy because now on the other side, if no one's coming through those doors, if you don't have coaches coming to visit during that time, then it's not likely that your coach has the juice. That's just a nugget.
Especially if you have dreams of playing at the next level. If they not coming to see you, how you gonna get noticed?
Yeah, it's very simple. So so now you know. If you didn't know, now you know, and you can make a conscious decision whether it's the right fit for your son.
And you can't be afraid to hold your coach's feet to the fire. You know what I'm saying? My coaches know I'm a very aggressive parent.
Yeah.
When I know that contact period is opening up, I'm calling like, hey, who we got coming in this week?
Today?
Who coming tomorrow? Who coming next week? Because I'm getting my son prepared for that conversation. I'm doing research. I'm making sure that we following these coaches on Twitter and things like that, so we can build these relationships. So please reach out to your coach and ask for an NCAA calendar. Ask when those contact periods are. Ask when the quiet periods are, when you can go onto campuses. These are all things that you have to do as we pivot back to parent involvement. These are things that you have to be up on if you really want to get your kid to the next level.
Yeah, because it's on you. It's on you to know. And then if you know, then you can make a conscious decision on how to navigate the situation.
Absolutely.
And help the coach too, right? Absolutely. You know, it's not 100% on the coaches. Parents have to be involved. They have to do their part. But it's very simple, guys. If the coaches are not driving coaches to their school to see your kid, it's very challenging for your kid to get recruited. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. Now, it's not impossible because there are exposure camps. Mm-hmm. There's things that you can do, take them to the school, to the open camps. There's things that you can do to put your kid out there. It's just a little bit more challenging because it's still it means something for your when coach for you. A head coach says, "Hey, this is a dog. He got it.
He got it." Yeah.
And then when they turn that film on, they see that you're doing that, right? They see that you're making those plays. To me, that lines up when they do those evaluations. That lines up and it holds a little bit stronger weight than you just saying, or you going out to exposure camp saying, "Hey, my son good. He can do this. Right. He can play at this level." As a parent, everybody probably think their kid can play at this level. Right. So you need a spokesman. Right. So absolutely. Find a coach that's gonna help you and that's gonna be that person for you.
Absolutely. Nothing is more important than your coach's word. They come to those schools because they trust the product that school produces, but they also, more than anything, trust the word of that coach. I've reached out to my coach and say, "Hey, we really want to develop a relationship with the A school or B school," and he's made that happen. You know what I mean? With just one phone call. Can your coach do that? I know I can look at my coach's phone right now, and every coach that you see on Saturdays, he got them in his phone. Can your coach do that? Those are things that you have to be not afraid to ask, you know what I mean? Not put yourself in those positions. So what's your overall relationship like with your coach, with Coach Dreyer?
With Dreyer?
Yeah.
That's my guy.
Yeah.
If you look at my call out, Dreyer's name is on there very consistently.
Yeah.
For one, I wanted to make sure I have a good relationship with him, and I want to make sure that my son is meeting his expectations. So we stay in consistent conversations about that. And for the two, he's just someone who, as hard as he expects my son to work to make the program successful, make the team successful, he's working just as hard. My son has received offers at 9 p.m. at night.
Boy,
that means that he's on the phone talking, trying to get evaluations all through the night, on weekends, on holidays. He works as hard as the kids work. And so for me, that's the best relationship that you can ask for. So yes, I talk to Dreyer all the time. You know what I'm saying? Hey, I'm probably gonna talk to him when I leave here.
Exactly, for sure.
Is that the same thing with Bowden?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember a weekend we had during the contact period where he was working on some things for Cam. He was really starting to pick up a lot of P4 offers, P5 at the time, P4 now. But I remember, man, we was chilling in the morning, 8 o'clock. I mean, he up 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, having a conversation with these coaches. We get a call from Michigan, Michigan offering. 20 minutes later, Cincinnati offering. Right. At night we get Virginia Tech. This is just the type of work that those kind of coaches are putting in. Shout out to Coach Dreyer. Shout out to Coach Bowden. Shout out to Coach Ty at Taft. Shout out to Coach Jones out at Middletown. These guys are that really got their feet on the pavement working for these kids.
Yeah,
you gotta have hustle muscle as a coach.
That's what it's about. And as a parent, that's all you ask for. So yes, the relationship is there. We want to communicate, and I want to stay in touch because I want to know. I want to get the feedback. Yeah. How can my son get better? How do we take it to the next level? What's the next thing that we need to do? Are we missing this? Should we have this? Are we registered for NCAA? Do we need we need to be in the know? What school should we go to? What schools when we go to? I want to be able to get as much information as possible so we can make an educated decision. Because again, the ultimate goal is to put the kid in the best situation to be successful.
Absolutely.
So speaking of relationships, Cam just committed, right?
Yeah.
to Illinois. Shout out
to Illinois.
How big of a part that relationships made in that process? Because coaches are leaving, right? You know, positions are changing. Like, when you talk about relationships, you know, how important was that in him making that decision? And then what did that look like for you guys?
From the aspect of Illinois. Yeah. So, you know, relationships were very important. So during our contact period this year, you know, we had a top six of schools that we felt that were our best opportunities to go on to the next level and play ball. You know, they built on our core values of relationships, of development, and ultimately have an opportunity to get on the field and maybe have a chance to live their ultimate dream and play in the NFL one day. You know, so our relationship with Illinois was just they literally checked all the boxes during that period. Everything that we valued, they sat down with us and made sure that those boxes were checked. They have a head coach, Coach Billema, who's very successful, but we know that he's going to be there for a long time, and that's important to us. We don't want to go to a place where, you know, you switching out head coaches every year. So because what people don't know is when the head coach leaves, everybody up under him got to go too. You know what I mean? So if you don't have a relationship with that head coach, you know, their assistants are going to be leaving too, and so all of their assistants had came back. They have a strong foundation there. You know, just a lot of the coaches we'd have a sense that they're going to be there for a long time, and that was a really great opportunity for us to build and develop at that school for a long time.
Now that's a good point, because again, with the NIL, you know, things has changed. You know, name, image, and likeness. Yes, so, you know, money is involved now, right? But, you know, I tell people all the time that, you know, money cannot be the priority. Not meaning it ain't important. No. But the priority criteria still has to be the same. That doesn't change. Relationships, you know, the opportunity to get on the field, the development, you know, how long, the sustainability of the coaches, how long they're going to be there. Those things are extremely important. Those still have to be the foundation of how you make those decisions. Now, if you have a university to check all these boxes, and you have another university to check all these boxes, and the math ain't mathing, you got to make a business decision. You got to make a business decision, but you can't lead with that. I don't think it makes sense to lead with that. I think you need to check the boxes, and then, you know, you got to make the math make sense.
Because to me, a lot of times, if they are offering you an absorbent amount of money, it's because they don't believe in the product that they're producing. You know what I mean? So, like you say, if you line your schools up and they all checking boxes, you know, go with what your core values are, because the NIL, the opportunities for name, image, and likeness, you know, that's going to cut. That's part of the game now. That's not going nowhere. Right. You know, so don't lead with that. Please make decisions based on what's the best fit for you. Like, do not go to a school that's not a great scheme fit for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have defensive guys. Right. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to go to a program that wants to put your hand in the dirt if you've been playing linebacker your whole career. You know what I mean? Or if you've been a outside corner, you don't want to be playing and putting you in a slot the whole time. Right, you know what I mean? Right. You have to go to places that are great scheme fits for you. That should be your like first priority. Going somewhere that fits. Because if you don't go somewhere like that, you might not get on the field. You'll be having to hit the portal, and then you have to restart the engine all over again, and then the money changes. So don't get me wrong. You know, I'm all for the money, because I remember getting a little stipend and struggling to, you know, pay the rent, eat, and have a little fun. So I think that is definitely important, and I'm happy that it's happening. And you know, I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of it. I want these kids to make as much money as possible. I just think they need to do it when they're making a decision. Just be smart about it, because you're trying to get the long money. You know what I'm saying? It's about the long term. So that's important. All right. Next question that I have for you. What you got for me?
So, you know, bringing these kids on, you know, because we're talking to some of the top kids in college football. Yeah. We have the opportunity to sit down with them and learn about their upbringing, learn about, their relationships with their parents, hear about their stories. How do you feel like, them being able to share their stories and their sentiment about their experience will help, the future generation, or even, the people who don't even know how to navigate this college experience, listening to top elite high school athletes?
So I think having these kind of athletes on our show is a huge benefit to our community, because they've been through it all. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They've been through the youth ball, to where they notice their talents, and now they're being they're getting exposure and things like that. What we're doing is highlighting the process, and what goes through with that. When is it important to take camps? Should you be going to exposure camps? Like you said, your relationship with your coaches. I think our athletes on our show do a great job of really exposing the like real from the fake out there. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The like real from the fake out there. We just had a great guest on who knew quick. Like, once you have a certain status, it's going to be a bunch of people who trying to, piggyback off you. So I think our athletes really speak on the whole process of it.
And it's good to hear them having the ability to be able to make conscious decision about who is in a circle, like who do I, cling on to, or who do I let go? Mm-hmm. Like who's on the same trajectory, and who, is pulling me up, and who's pulling me down. Mm-hmm. That's important, because right now, again, high school sports is kind of like, because now kind of like the college, and college is kind of like the pros. Mm-hmm. So it's important for kids to get that down now and be able to talk to it. And also, I love for them to have the opportunity to share their story, because they're gonna have the opportunity to go back after they be Hall of Famers, and they go out there and be Pro Bowlers. They're gonna be like, I did this podcast, as a high school athlete. They can go and see how they've been able to mature and see that come to fruition from start. So I think that's going to be a beautiful thing to be able to see. Absolutely. Talking to some of these athletes.
One of the biggest things I think that our athletes give back is just the work that they put in. Yeah. I think when people see them, or their teammates see them, they just see them at practice. Yeah. And they don't understand what goes on when they leave practice, or on Saturdays and Sundays when they, out there training by themselves, or with their trainer, or, whatever it may be, because these accomplishments and these opportunities come when other people ain't working. Right. You know what I mean? When everybody's sleeping and you out there working, that's when the opportunities come. Yeah. Because you have to do something to separate yourself. Yes. And I think when our viewers tune in, they're all going to see that our athletes that we're interviewing are doing work off the camera. and
like here's what I tell people all the time. It's not the work that they put in yesterday. Right. It's not the work that they put in last week. Mm-hmm. It's not the work that they put in a month ago. Like, these kids have been working for an extremely long time, and they planting these seeds, and then they're watering it, and they're giving it sun, and then eventually it's gonna sprout. Mm-hmm. Right. But you can't feel like, oh, I got a strong workout this weekend, I'm about to go dominate this season. No, it doesn't work like that. It has to be a level of consistency and commitment, and it has to be a commitment over a long period of time. Mm-hmm. And that's how you really develop if you're trying to be one of those top kids in the nation. Yeah. Like, you see those kids that's one of the top kids in the nation, they have a foundation of that discipline, a foundation of that work ethic, and they've been doing it for an extremely long time. So this is not yesterday's work. When you see these guys posting up 20, 30 offers, it's not because some stuff that they did in the gym last week. It's because they've been rooted into this. They've been doing this for a very long time, and they've been grinding for a very long time. Which brings me to the next question. Okay. Picking good trainers. Ooh. So that's the thing going on.
I love that.
In Kentucky.
Okay.
Where it seems like there's you know how you have battle rappers. Yeah. It's like a gym battle. Yeah. It's gym beef out here.
Gym wars. Gym wars. We call them.
Yeah, gym wars. Yeah. In Kentucky. And I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't understand why there is even a place for it. Yeah. I know you're a little bit closer to it than me.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, what's your thought on it? And we don't have to drop no name. They know who they are.
They know who they is.
But why?
You know, I just think it's a miscommunication. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of the top trainers, they don't even do the same thing. You know what I mean? They don't even do the same thing. You know, they could work together and get more results than trying to bicker and picking fights and do stuff like that. And because in the end, only people that suffer is the kids. Because the last thing I hate to see is a kid feeling guilty for going to this trainer or hiding that he's going to this trainer. You know what I mean? Because it takes a village to do these kids, to raise these kids and put them in these positions to be successful. You know what I mean? So like coming up, you know what I mean? Like I was my son's trainer for a very long time. You know what I'm saying? Until I noticed that it's only so far I could take him.
Right.
And then I took him to another trainer. And then that trainer took him to as far as he can go.
Absolutely.
And now my son's at that elite level. Now we have a great recipe of trainers that we go to. You know what I mean?
You said that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Like no one gets more credit than the development of our kids besides us. Let's just make that let's just make that clear. Like unless you was in the trenches, changing diapers, making them run when they 5 years old in the backyard, like taking them all over the world, man. Like that's
having many conversations of your wife yelling at you like, we supposed to go here. I said, look, we got training to do today.
Crying in the car, you know what I'm saying? Having tough conversation, pushing them, like that's where the development of that athlete comes from, the foundation, you know, so that's who gets the credit for building them into who they are. Now, I will say, to your point, there are trainers, you need to take them to the next level. It's a point where the parent, like, you can't give them everything. At some point, you know, you need to elevate their game. You need them to get to a next level, whether it's a body style or whether it's a skill level. Yeah. And again, the gym war thing doesn't make any sense because the services are different. And really, you shouldn't feel guilty by going to one service provider to build your body and then going one service provider to get your feet work right.
When I'm spending my money,
when you're spending your it don't make any sense because both of them are a necessity. They really should work, really should be working together, feeding the kids through a holistic program where they're developing the skill set from top to bottom, building the body, having a great skill set, being able to move laterally, like all those things is what you need to build an ultimate athlete. So I just like to see them. I think they should just work together, man. I hate seeing that because, you know, it's a lot of kids out there that can really benefit from both of the resources, and nobody should feel like they in a gang because they go work out with one person and they can't go mess with the other person. Like that ain't how it should be, man.
Right. Yeah, because like I said, in the end, only the kids suffer. You know what I mean? You know, because the trainer, he gonna have his clients. You know what I mean? But if that kid is now, because he's got a close bond with this trainer, he's going to miss out on what he's missing going to trainer B or trainer C, or you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so that's like, so I tell my trainers, like I go to this guy on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I go to you Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
And Ace have trainers. He like, you know, our trail, Nat in New Orleans. He works Neville's. Me, like, we work, like, you have multiple trainers because, you know, everybody teach things a little bit differently, or they focus on different areas, and you need all that to help build an athlete. And I love all our trainers. That's why we pick them, you know, because, you know, we feel like they can bring something different to the overall athlete. All right, so the training is obviously extremely important, and now even more so important than ever because you really got to be tight these days. Like, your game got to be good. Your film got to be immaculate. Like, you got to have the measurables. Like, it's extremely competitive to get your kid into college now, because money's involved. And B, because college coaches have a lot of options. Like you have the JUCO, you have, they get the extra year. You got, the
extra 4 years
transfer portal that they can pick kids from that already have experience. So what's your advice on how to navigate that? Because now the athlete bar, you in order to be highly recruited, you got to be that guy.
Yeah. So first off, let it be known that the bar to get recruited has been risen. You know, that bar has been shot through the ceiling at this point now. Because like Dee say, and coaches are getting paid more. So they have the urgency to win now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
they gonna lose their job.
Right. They gonna lose their job. So they really ain't got time to be dealing with no 16, 17-year-old kid who trying to figure out how to do a back pedal. You know what I mean? So I think obviously every case is going to be different. If you're a high 4, 5-star kid, you're still probably going to get recruited traditionally. You're still going to get courted by these universities. You could probably still wait till last minute to make a decision.
Right.
But the majority of kids out there, you really need to be conscious about what offers and interests you have on the table. And if you have one that you're solid on, you need to be really considering sitting down with your family, sitting down with your representation, and thinking about committing somewhere.
Yeah.
Because these kids are coming out of the transfer portal with 2-3 years experience in the weight room, in the playbook, on the field. Now you're getting kids out of JUCO who've been in school for 2 years. Now they're getting another 4 years of eligibility. And then not to mention, kids are getting name, image, and likeness on their current roster and staying on campus longer than they normally do. So you really have to be, for one, you got to put in the work. This is not a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday type thing. You got to be putting in the work Monday through Saturday. You might want to rest to go to church on Sunday and pray about it. because your back is against the wall as a high school kid. You know what I mean? Because you're at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to options. You know what I mean?
So what he basically saying is, if you got a girl at home, don't take your little rested butt out there and be trying to court these girls out here in the club. You better commit to the one that you have at home, because if you go out here and you don't catch nothing, you gonna come home and Mercedes-Benz gonna be in your driveway. Right. You feel what I'm saying? So hey, you for real, you have to understand where you at as a recruit.
Yes.
Make sure that you're chasing the right level. I think you mentioned that early.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're chasing the right level. And then understanding where you at on that recruiting board, in comparison to the other places. And then make a decision. Make a decision based on those things, and don't try to string out that process too long, because
don't do it.
These coaches still have to fill their roster, right? And if they feel like they don't have the opportunity or a great chance to get you, then they got to move on to the next, because their job is at stake as well. To your point.
Yeah. Do not try to wait this thing out, because the options out there for these coaches are endless. If you have options on the table, you need to be taking those, for sure. So
we talked about wins and losses a little bit. You said that really wasn't super important, when you're thinking about high school, but I do think
not to me. And can I tell you why?
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, I'm from Cleveland.
Right. So y'all used to losing.
Nah, well, on the pro level for sure. Shout out to all the Browns fans out there. It's a dirty job. Somebody got to do it. But on the high school level, I just don't, especially at the D1 level, I just personally do not think that winning state championships is a realistic expectation for public schools. I think 23 of the last 25 state champions have been Catholic schools, because they can operate at different rules. We have to get kids from 10 city blocks when they can get kids from anywhere. You got...
But there are public schools have won state championships at the D1 level. Right? And
when?
There are. Don't make me go back through our group chat.
Years and years ago.
Don't make me go back to our group chat.
Ago.
And it's something to that, but there's definitely something to playing deep into the playoffs, getting to the state championship, winning the state championship. It's something to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, Anderson, Ace starting as a freshman, He's played 31 games as a sophomore. 31 games. That's 3 seasons.
Yeah.
As a sophomore. So his advancement, his development over that time period, his comfortability, confidence with the game has changed dramatically. He's been playing in high level, high pressure situations for, 15 of those. You know, it's 15 of those games. So like, I do think and also the longer you play, the more eyes are on you. You're like, so when everybody playing, coaches can't watch 1,000 games. But when you get deep in that playoffs, there's only a couple of games that's on. There's only a few games that's on. So I do think it's important. But to your point, it is, private schools do have an advantage, because they have the opportunity to recruit and bring in kids from anywhere. I wish they just get rid of that. Like, just let kids go where they want.
Go where they want to go.
Just go play.
Just go play where you want to play. Because like I said, I'm from Cleveland, and there's a lot of great public schools programs that can't win state championships because they can't get through St. Ignatius. They can't get through St. Edwards. When St. Edwards wins a state championship, they got 12 counties on their roster. How you go compete with that when you got to get kids from 10 city blocks? You know what I mean? Like, it's just different. Then when you get down here to Cincinnati, you got to go through the molars and St. Ed.
He's scared of molar. I was waiting for him to bring that up. You know what I'm saying? I was waiting for him to bring that up.
Things like that. So I just
molar. Cam, I know you've in the background back there backstage. I don't want to scare you when he bring up the name Moeller.
No, we ain't scared. We just don't think it's just me personally. Just coming from where I come from and at the D1 level, man, it's just not a realistic expectation. Realistic expectation of winning a state championship.
We actually tried to get a scrimmage with Moeller this year and got dodgeball. I'm just saying.
For sure.
But this is good conversation. I think it's a lot of important information. And again, that's the reason why we're doing this, so we can kind of share these nuggets and share these experiences so people can learn from these experiences and hopefully gain some knowledge on how they need to navigate, the experience for their student athlete. One thing that we didn't touch on is grades. Grades are important. Again, as the bar has changed, as the bar has risen, right? Coach ain't got time to deal with you. You ain't going to school. You ain't going to class.
You are an investment.
Yeah. Why would they deal with you if you're not going to school? You're not going to class. You can't pass a test.
Absolutely.
So if you can't pass a test, what do make think you're gonna learn a 100-page playbook?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you can't learn a 100-page playbook, then you can study for a test.
Yeah.
So let me just make sure that's clear out there, because we got a lot of very savvy, high IQ guys, right? And talking about they struggling on tests. Nah, you ain't preparing like you preparing for the sport. So you got to have an equal balance. That's my.
And I think we spoke about that before on a prior show that we had before. Just really, these athletes today are breaking that mold of dumb jock. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of these top level athletes get 3.5s, 4.0s. One of my proudest moments, and I don't think I've shared this with my son, is one of the proudest moments I've had with him is when he got offers from Duke and Northwestern. You know what I'm saying? These are big academia, programs. You know what I mean? So that means he's handling his business on the field and in the classroom. Absolutely. So that was a very proud moment for me, for sure.
Yeah, so academics is extremely important. So you got to just make sure that you're checking all the boxes too. If you want to be highly recruited, you got to make sure that you're checking the box. And we're going to continue to go out and bring you guys the best talent in the nation, so you guys can hear what they're doing. So you don't have no excuse. No excuse of not knowing how to get what you need to get to prepare yourself for being the best. And at the end of the day, it's a will thing, man. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to do to put yourself in the best situation possible to be successful? And that's for parents too. Like, what are you willing to do for your athlete, for your student athlete? You can't be sitting at a school that nobody's coming to and nobody's recruiting and complaining why your son's not getting recruited and you haven't seen a scout come there in 3 years.
Right.
And then you try to wait till your last year to that you
and then calling me or calling D.
Yeah, come on now. You got to make smart decisions as well and be willing to take, because this is what I do see, and I'm gonna call this out. So I see a lot of parents who are super invested in park ball, they traveling, they buying all the gear, they buying thousands of tennis shoes,
right.
They like spending all the money, and they worried about the rankings, you know, taking them to these exposure camps, and then when they get where it matters, when they get in high school, then for some reason,
it's the coach's job now.
Yeah, it's handed out it's handed out to the coach, and I'm not willing to make these same investments on time and same investments on moves that you need to make. So like, you can't stop. Like if you're gonna be that person in park ball, you need to be that person when it matters, when it truly matters, and that's in high school. And again, I can't say enough. Like surround yourself by the right staff, the right coaches. You know, I just looked down and Coach Dry just told Ace to text a coach.
Yeah.
So it doesn't stop. So like you gotta make sure that you're surrounding, and it's plenty of coaches out there that's doing it. That's beating the pavement. That's cold calling. You know what I'm saying? Out there now, you know, out there being a spokesperson for these athletes. Find those guys, and then understand the recruiting map in your area. Right there's a recruiting map. Right, where college coaches, they hop off that plane, they're going to these certain schools because it's on the recruiting map. Yeah, if they're not in that circle,
because I can tell you right now, when a high level D1 coach hops off the plane, he coming to Lakota West, he coming to Anderson, he coming to Taft, he coming to Winton Woods, he coming to Moeller. You know, off top, he coming to those schools. You know what I mean? So you need to be around that, and Princeton too. You know, you need to be around those circles, around those kids to make sure you are in that circle, because they only got so much time to be on the ground.
It ain't that they don't think the talents in those other areas in Kentucky. It's just that they got to get the best bang for their buck.
Right.
You know, they got to go where time where, you know,
where's multiple studs.
Where's multiple studs is, you know, boom, I go here, get multiple players, go see multiple players, go right next door and get multiple players. So it's just got to be smart about it and think holistically about it. And I hope, you know, this helps, you know, answer some questions that some parents may be having around, you know, why their kids are not picking up, because it does not mean that they're not talented.
Right.
Because we came from Kentucky. He came from Kentucky. So obviously there's talent in Kentucky. It's just about like putting them in the right situation. So
you gotta understand your coaches have jobs. You know what I mean? Like just like when you get off work from your hospital job or whatever career you got, you don't feel like coming home taking care of nobody, do you? You know what I mean? So it's the same for coaches. Like they have jobs. This isn't Texas where you get paid to coach football. You know what I mean? These coaches have jobs during the day. They come here to invest and pour into your kids. You know, so they may not every day feel like getting on the phone and talking to 25, 30 different coaches, because they have families, they have obligations, they have a life outside of football. You know what I mean? So you got to know what that balance is of what you're willing to accept from a coach at bare minimum, and then let him know, you know, what you're expecting from him as an outcome. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I'm just saying, if they got it, they got it. They don't, they don't. You know what I'm saying? Wise man once told me, if you got it, you got it. If you don't, you don't. You need to figure out if he got it. Right.
Got the juice.
If he got the juice. All right. So before we get off, I do want to just let's leave them. If you can share like a quick little playbook. If you had to give parents a playbook of, you know, what are the must-haves or what are the things that they must do to put themselves in the best situation to help their student athlete get recruited, what would be some of those things? Drop a few nuggets.
Okay, so I like that. So what I want y'all to do, this is our free game portion. So get your notebooks out, get your pens, you know, get your notepads, whatever you need. Please take these notes down, because these are all things you need to be doing going into your next season. For one, you need to be on X, Twitter, whatever you call it. If you're not on Twitter as an athlete, you are not trying to get recruited. That is where coaches reach out. That's how they communicate. That's how your coach sends your your game film, all different kind of stuff. So when you have a Twitter, and don't be cheap, please get a blue check. That allows you to have more access to coaches. You can hop in the DMs, you can send more messages. You could have longer tweets. You could do things like that. So please spend that extra buck to get that blue check on your kid's profile, and it look cool. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So please, and in your Twitter bio, please make sure you got your class, your measurables, your position you play, any accolades you've gotten, and most importantly, please have your contact information in there and your coach's contact information in there. Because a lot of times, if you're an underclassman, they can only reach out to the coach first. So please make sure you have your coach's info in that bio box.
In that link to the huddle.
Yeah.
In that link
Absolutely.
to the huddle.
Link
make
to the
sure
huddle.
You have that link to the huddle.
For sure.
And make sure your huddle tape best plays up front.
Yeah.
Be balling. Don't coaches don't have they're not gonna sit through 10 minutes, 20 minutes of film trying to figure out what your best plays is. Quick, fast, show them that you're a stud, and then move on from there.
Absolutely. Next is have an honest sit down with your coach. Because every parent thinks their kid is Shador Sanders and to think they all these different kids, and in reality it might not be. You know what I mean? You got to have a honest conversation with your coach. Sit down, because they see him. They see the skill set. They see their limitations. They see how explosive they can be. So sit down with your coach and ask them, hey, what is a realistic expectation of where, if we decide to do camps or showcases and things like that, where should we be trying to build these relationships? Is it D1? Is it D2? Is it D3? Should we be trying to do prep? Should we try to get an extra year? What should we be trying to do? You know what I mean? So have that honest, tough conversation with your coach, so you could have that honest and tough conversation with your kid. Yep. Because, a lot of times the kids are over recruiting themselves,
overshooting their shot.
Yeah, overshooting their shot, bro.
You're not cute enough to get a dime. Right. Get your 7 and keep it going.
Wait till the end and get that 3 at the end. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So yeah, so you got to just be honest of where you're being recruited. And then when you do go on these campuses, make an impression. You have to talk to people. You cannot just go to these places, do a couple drills, and leave. You need to be shaking hands. You need to be kissing babies. You need to be doing everything to leave an impression on that coach. Shake their hand. Hey, I'm Jackson Smith from Lakota West. I'm a quarterback, class 2027. Shout out Jackson. You know what I mean? Those are the kind of impressions that you have to leave. And me as a parent, I'm super invested. I'm super aggressive when I get on these campuses. I'm spotting them out. I'm like, okay, where they? Okay, linebacker coach over there, DC over there. You know what I mean? I'm lining them up. I remember I had a story. We was at Marshall, I would think it was, and I was with my buddy Ron Bierman. His son is at Grant Bierman. He's at Illinois as well now too. I seen all these coaches lined up, about to do their introductions to letting people know who they are, where they recruit, what positions they coach, and all that. So I said, man, I got all these business cards in my pocket. I'm about to go up to each one. So I create business cards for my son.
Okay,
when we go on campus, all the information on the front, coach's information on there, QR code on the back for his Twitter. You know what I'm saying?
That's next level.
Hey, next level.
That's next level.
I'm lining them up. I'm handing them out like, hey, you such and say, here, take this. Because at the end of the day, man, they go talk to so many different kids and they go forget all these conversations. But when they emptying their pants at night or they taking their keys out their pocket, hey, they gonna have that card on them. And when they lay down or when they sit on the toilet and do what they need to do, they gonna click that QR code. Hey, man, we've built so many relationships just off that, man. You have to be aggressive with these coaches because
that's free game, right?
Free game because the level of interest that your kid has. 200,000 other ones have it too. So that's my second point is sitting down with your coach, creating a realistic plan. Third is determine your investment. As a parent, you're going to have financial investment. You may have to pick up and move if you got to. You're going to have time investment, travel investment, financial investment, all different kind of things. You have to determine what you're willing to give to this process. You know what I mean? Because it's going to be a lot of sacrifices that you have to make. I made a career.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? I got so busy with him, I had to make a career change. You know what I mean? And which is a blessing for me. You know what I mean? Because it's giving him the opportunity to be where he is now. Fourth is select a trainer. You are not going to get to the next level doing things from team workouts. You know what I mean? You have to make sure that you're going to trainers 3-4 times a week, you know, so you could look the part when you get in front of these coaches. They ain't trying to, you talking about you a linebacker, but you ain't got no shoulders, calves straight up and down. That ain't what they trying to look. But you talking about you a 4 or 5 star kid. That ain't, you know what I mean? Along with the tape, you got to look the part.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You got to show up on these campuses and look the part. Lastly is you got to put the work in. You know, none of this stuff is possible without the work.
Yep.
You know, you can't run from it. You can't hide from it. You can't ignore it. The work is the work. You know, you got to put that hard work in when everybody else ain't working. So when you leave school, you got to be thinking of something else you can do to maximize your ability. And whether it's getting on the jug machine and catching footballs, or whether it's getting out on the sled and running, running hills or running track, whatever it may be, you have to do something to elevate yourself and separate yourself from the competition, because that's what this is. This is high level competition.
Love it. That is some game right there. And I'm gonna add one last one to it. FCA fellow Christian athlete. Everyone that we brought on the show so far has talked about their relationship with God. It's something to that, and I'm not putting pressure on anybody to do whatever, but I'm a believer, I have faith, but I think it's something to that. And I think it's a lot of, you can see that it's a trend where people are getting closer. Ohio State, a lot of those kids, they got getting baptized on campus.
Their whole team is bonded together.
The ball fell their way this year for the national championship. Like, open your eyes, so I think, fellow Christian athletes is extremely important. I didn't want to leave without saying that. And then I just close with, like, guys, at the end of the day, you got to have a willingness to work and go and get what you want. Anything is possible, right? But it's about what are you willing to do to go get it. And I always, I said this a long time in a speech I was doing for a college graduation, high school graduation, is that, you cannot have a $1 million dream with $100 work ethic. You just cannot have it. Like, you have to be something that you think about day in and day out. You have to ask yourself, look yourself in the mirror and say, are you doing everything that you can to be the best version of yourself? I tell my son is that, hey, you ever seen the cartoons? You got the little angel on one shoulder, you got the devil on the other shoulder. Somebody's telling you, you can just sleep in. You ain't got to work out today. The other like, no, you better get up. Somebody else out there working. They got somebody else ranked higher than you right now. You know what I'm saying? So, like, who are you going to listen to? It's about winning that battle. It's about winning that battle. That those two sides of those consciousness. There's that one consciousness that's going to tell you that, hey, you can chill out, you can move left. And then there's other consciousness that tell you, hey, you need to kick it up another level. You need to move in this direction, the more positive. So it's about you being able to listen to that conscious that's driving you to be the best version of yourself. And you got to dedicate yourself to your craft day in and day out. And don't let nothing get in the way of it. No birthdays, no Christmas holidays, no nothing. Like, when it's time to put the work in, you got to be dedicated, put the work in. You can't be playing video games expecting to get better on the field. You may get better at math, but it ain't gonna help you get better on the field. So, I just want to make sure that we understand that the work comes first. No dream is possible without the work. So make sure that happens. So, man, this is a good show, man. I appreciate you coming on. Let's knocking out our episode and talk about recruited. Hey, guess what though? You've been recruited.
Yes, sir.